All right, welcome everyone to tonight's lecture video. Um, we're in week 3, but this is the second lecture, and right now we're just kind of reviewing things from week 2. We're going to look at some of those week 2 assignments. It looks like pretty much everyone has got it in. If you haven't got it in, you still got time. And also, it's okay if you didn't get it in and you're behind the 8 ball a little bit. Um, you can work on the assignments after the due date. It should be possible. The problem is that you just run the risk of maybe getting behind one day. But for the most part, you just want to dive right in. There were uh, well, let's take a look at both of the labs. All right, so we have, let's see, the lab one was just entering shells into the command. All right, just getting the understanding of the interactivity of this, of how it works, getting comfortable with the command prompt, learning certain types of commands that will do certain things. Obviously, the echo is super popular. ls is probably the king of all commands. And then being able to change directories, right? Being able to get into different folders or directories, being able to create files. So I thought this was pretty smooth. It was pretty much well written as well. Um, Here there were some questions about editing a file with Nano. Um, there was also the ability to edit files with Vim. Again, Vim and Nano, especially Vim, that could be an entire week's worth of material to understand the nuances of Vim. And instead, what I'll do is I will refer us to this Vim tutorial, and it's pretty interactive. Um, I'll drop that in the chat so we can kind of take a look at that, and I'll demonstrate that as well as what that would look like. And then also starting to edit something with Nano. Obviously, Nano is going to be a little bit more user friendly. So sometimes if you don't want to uh, get get caught up or something weird happens, just do Nano. Nano's just as good. You can edit it, customize it. But Vim is kind of that, when you want that hacker edge, when you want to work on certain things, Vim is going to be that editor. And what I'll do is I'll open up my Linux shell. Let's see here. Oh, it's going so slow here. One sec. Right. Um, and so there's this command called Vim tutor. And Vim and VI are used interchangeably. So when you type in that command, Vim tutor, there are many lessons. And I've haven't assigned this, but it's more so for you to explore. I don't feel like investing a lot of time in a text editor that many may not decide to use. It's really to me a matter of preference. But one of the objectives for the Linux Plus test is that you are familiar with a text editor. Um, and so there is a need to know how to use them, but um, I'll leave that up to you to kind of work on and maybe do some of these lessons. I think um, Vim, or we sometimes call VI, it goes without saying it's a powerful editor, but like in what way, right? Some people say like the advanced like gurus and of like hacking and computer scientists, it's like controlling a piano. Like they say, like it's like a work of art. People that are coding in VI or in or writing bash scripts, because of the commands and like once you become familiar with all of them, it just becomes like this. It's a very like convenient kind of way. And you also know when you do have a shell, 9 times out of 10, Vim is going to be on there. And so it's always going to be that reliable type of text editor that you can count on um, in almost any Linux environment. And so there are tons of lessons in here as you just kind of go through them. So I'll leave that up to you and you can look at that. And once again, that command is Vim tutor. Also the yeah. Yeah. All right. So let me just I'm gonna what I'll do is just
What are we doing?
I'm gonna do a mute all, but you should have the power to unmute if and when you need to. So yeah, take a look at this. It's really interesting. There's different modes. There's different there's command mode, there's the insert mode, and you kind of have to know what mode you're in. Even to exit out of Vim can be pretty tricky. Um, so a lot of people have bad experiences with it, and then they just switch altogether and just get out of there. But uh, I just wanted you guys to be aware of that there are many different ways to get out and use Vim and all that. So um, now make sure that your cap locks key is not depressed and press J enough times to move the cursors to less than one completely falls into the screen. So yeah. So they're kind of guiding you through that. And here are some of the things that they would want you to do. All right. So yeah, that's one of the things there from last week. So what we'll do now is we're going to get into this week's stuff, and I will share my screen real fast here. Seconds. All right. Let's see. That's not even the one. There we go. That was the one. I should have kept 1 second. I should have kept that on the screen. Yeah, I'll have to just keep it on the screen. Um, so I'll do is share out here. All right, all right, all right. So this week's material is talking about managing user accounts. Okay, so a big part of being a Linux administrator is being able to add users, create groups, modify them, delete them, and there are certain principles that come along with kind of the methodology behind creating groups and what types of permissions they should get and things like that. Probably things you've heard of in the past. So, but these objectives today will be to understand how to manage user and group accounts, learn to configure and manage privilege escalation, troubleshoot. And then I'm going to add another piece on to it, which is a separate topic, but we're going to look at a little bit of Linux file permissions. There aren't no labs on that. The labs this week is primarily on creating users and creating groups. But I think down the road, we will have a study on permissions and the ACL lists and things like that. So that's coming, but we got to get the ball rolling, and I want us to go into the direction of working with files, understanding the hierarchy of the file system, understanding where to find things and why things are where they are. And so we're going to be getting into that really quickly. So that's going to get us prepared to take on uh, more challenging labs and things like that, but all in due time. So the idea here is that um, the importance of user management is it really boils down to security, accountability, and resource management. And so obviously it goes without saying that um, you know, having a good management system is the key to security, and also ensuring that only the authorized individuals can access files and services. So that would reduce a lot of risks. It's kind of like the principle of least privilege type of. And then of course the accountability, that's part of the CIA triad. Accountability is huge. All right. User management, we got each user account is tied to a specific user activities, which is essential for accountability, and then also resource management. So it also has to do with managing user accounts will allow for efficient and allocation of optimization and resources, ensuring that the system's resources are used effectively and appropriately. So here are some of the commands that you'll be using. And some of you may have jumped into the next set of labs, maybe one or two. That's fine. I encourage working ahead. Just um, as you know, work to your own comfort um, zone and your comfort speed. And so user delete is pretty self-explanatory. It will delete a user's account. It's also kind of important when when you're deleting things, and even in general, you have to be careful about the R with the tick R or /R, because I mean that's usually stands for recursively. When you're removing something, you're removing the recursive concept too. And so that will enable you to remove not only a user, but everything that that user, may have had or created. And so um, it's really, really powerful. That's the thing about Linux that makes it different um, uh, from other operating systems. There's more of a finality to Linux when you do something as an admin, whereas in Windows, you might delete something, but who knows under the hood of a Microsoft operating system, it may be somewhere still, or there's going to be some forensics and things that they could probably try to retrieve, like you're probably really not deleting things. Whereas in Linux, it is off of the entire system, right? It's not even taking up any more memory. It's gone. Um, and then we also have user add and user mod, right? The user mod command modifies users' account properties, allowing changes to shells, home directories, and group membership. All right. And so you'll be playing around inside of different directories within your Linux machine. There is there's a folder called the etc folder, and it is in the root directory. So as you see that first slash, that is the root. So there's nothing behind that. So etc. folder is in the root directory there. And then yeah, there's a question coming in. So here it says, so if you don't use the -R command, there still could be some information that can be retrieved from a deleted account. I believe so. I believe so. And that's something where we can test it out and see and verify. But yeah, I mean, it even goes with when you have to delete a folder, and there is like a directory, and there's really no command uh to delete a directory. You do it by moving it recursively. Um, I mean, there's the remove, but when you do it recursively, it will actually do it. The same thing with renaming something, right? We'll look at those commands will come up, I think, next week. But the command to rename a file is kind of puzzling how it's done. You're really just moving it to its same location, but with a different name. And then the name has been changed. And when you want to remove a folder, they won't let you do it unless you use the -R and some kind of pseudo-command, and then you will wipe it out. It will everything into it. And sometimes they say not to really, you have to use certain commands sparingly, because they're just too powerful. Like you could, delete so many other things, more things than you probably wanted to. So that's why when we use it, we have to really make sure um, we're very intentional about using that command. Um, and so there are two different folders, and both of these folders are pretty significant. Basically, inside the etc. folder is this file called password, and that file it contains all the user account informations, including the structure of entries, such as the username, user ID, GID, home directory shell, and more. All right. So, and I could, we'll take a look at some of those commands after these slides. I have a few more slides to get through, and then we also have the shadow file. And so the shadow file will store encrypted user passwords and other password aging information. So it's not, you know, it's in plain sight. There is no other location where these documents exist. These are them. Um, and it also plays a crucial role in separating password related data from the other file. All right, and then there's the other piece about groups. All right. Why do they have groups? What are some of the, groups by default? When you add users, they will belong to certain groups, and there could be a group for everybody. So it's, everybody can access certain things. It might not be that much. It could be just like for announcements and things that are shared. And I will say this too, because I've been, when you are out in the field, even when you have a great job, you're always constantly looking still, or you're always still in touch with recruiters just to see what else is out there. And I'll tell you, some of the highest paid tech jobs are Linux administrators, especially if you hold a top secret clearance. Um, and so, and I don't know if that's anybody's thing, or, if someone has experience in this, and it's not necessarily, you could be a civilian and still hold top uh, uh, clearance levels, but just kind of an FYI, something to put on your radar. As you are coming up and getting certificates and looking at opportunities to reposition your career, you might want to consider, okay, what does it take for me to get this clearance? And now that tech is becoming more accessible through AI and a lot more people are starting to head into coding because they feel like they're going to be a little bit more resourceful, and they're just learning more on their own. You can customize certain lessons to exactly what you want, as you're teaching yourself through AI, but without having the right certificates or clearance, you might not get the full. And when I'm talking over $100 an hour type of money. Even in certain places, $200 an hour. And this is well, they're different locations, but part of having the clearance is so that you can have more access to sensitive information, and you create groups. You can be at the top of the food chain. um, it also simplifies management, so there's that piece too. Managing users and groups simplifies administrative tasks and ensures consistent permissions across users performing similar roles, leading to more organized and efficient managements. And then there's the user group management commands. You'll see group add, group mod, group delete. They're pretty basic, straightforward. Oh yes, I've been meaning to drop another book into our files, so be on the lookout. Um, there's going to be a couple. I have the Linux Bible on PDF, and also um, there is a Linux Systems Administrator book title. I forget the full title, but I'll probably be dropping two more books into the file section, and it's really just for educational purposes to kind of thumb through it as you will. Oftentimes we just take pieces of it. We don't necessarily use the whole thing, but some books do better jobs than others. Obviously, that's why there are multiple books out there. Just the way certain materials presented and organized, sometimes it's easier to digest, or there's also the manual for Linux, where um, it's called a cookbook for Linux. Yeah, that's another one, or where it just has a bunch of commands and what they do, and it's all kind of just listed out. So, like, obviously, you'll start to realize that, oh man, like there are so many commands. How do I find the commands? What do they do? And how can I keep track of them? Where are the cheat sheets at? And so really the cheat sheets to me, I look at as textbooks. And so um, here's another slide where we're talking about configuring privilege escalations. Has anybody ever heard of the concept of least privilege before, and when maybe one of your previous classes, maybe even in cloud? I know we have some students in cloud. Uh, okay, nice. How's that class going, by the way? Which are you guys working in a specific cloud, or are there one or multiple different clouds, or forming your own cloud? Uh, okay, yeah, Joseph, yeah, Joseph. Oh, GCP, yes. And networking is such a big thing. Networking is huge when it comes to um, IT. I mean, it is the bread and butter of IT, and especially when you're talking about security, right? And hacking in particular. 'Cause hacking is not going away. It is the hacking community is thriving. It's still thriving. And I I should share a little bit about what I've been doing with that a little bit too. And at some point it will come out. But there are bounties out there where, and you'll read about like the breakthrough story, how like these kids or people are just made like millions as a bounty hunter, and there probably are people that's doing that, but for me, I really do it just for educational purposes, really. I'm not out there trying to uh you know feed myself. But I figure as you start to rank up and you start to learn different concepts and how the internet works, and just understanding the needs of certain organizations, um, like HackerOne, for example. These are really, really good hacker bounty programs, and it's really low entry, high ceiling. But it really stems around most of those companies. There's thousands of them. It really stems around privilege escalation. Are people able to access sensitive things? And if you're able to exploit certain loopholes and you're able to demonstrate it, people are gonna always pay out for that. And there are quite a few people doing that. And not only that, the top guys who do it also write about it quite a bit. So you start to get involved into the community, into the blogs, into certain websites, and you start doing a lot of capture the flags for fun just to sharpen those hacking skills. But again, that's another branch that not everybody is headed in that direction. I know Riley mentioned it, a few others. Um, oh wow, so you remember your A+ course? Justin talked about the principle of least privilege. Yeah, it's popped up here as well. It is it's it's part of the IT paradigm. Um, and now there are these commands here using sudo and vi sudo. So sudo command allows permitted users to execute commands as the super user. So even though you're not root, if you do sudo, you can execute a command like a root user. Um, and then the vi sudo will edit the sudoers file safely to prevent syntax errors and highlighting the importance of the configuration there. So it's all good stuff, all good stuff. So we're applying those principles, and it's all about the basics. We're still applying those principles even in IT 240. They don't seem to go anywhere. All right. Um, we have configuring the standard Linux permissions. And here are some of the things here, okay? And again, this is a slightly different topic, um, but we will get into this at a later time. There'll be a lab probably in a few weeks, and we'll be looking at the permissions, modifying the permissions, and changing files to executable. When we'll be learning a little bit about Bash scripting, and so that's like your Linux programming language. And it's not like it's not like an object orientated. There's no high powered. It's not like C, um, or even Python or anything. But there is a small little component to it, and I'm still kind of on the decision on what kind of project we'll be doing. Um, but we'll talk about changing files to executables and things of that sort when we get into the scripting, which will be happening probably next month, early next month. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of zip through this right now. But what we'll be doing is talking about the Gmod special permissions, and we will also look at some of the tasks there that you're going to be able to do once you're able to modify certain permissions. You'll be configuring the access control list, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. Okay. So those were pretty much the slides. Now we will look at um, some of the labs because there's actually a lot, right? We're like reaching a peak, and then I think what's going to end up happening is we will probably taper off with the load because the load is it's kind of it feels like it's ramping up. Let me share my screen. So what we'll do now is take a peek at some of the future labs that we'll be talking about during this week. Um, so there is a chapter 4, and that I'd like for you to read. I was going to add a couple of questions from reading to get the 5 points, but I don't think I did, and I'm not going to worry about that. That's neither here nor there. So just kind of thumb through the reading, make notes, highlight certain things. This book, I think it's really spot on right now. There's something about this resource that I really, really like. So we keep coming back to it. And so let me preview that one for us really fast. So here's that book. Now, we did do chapter 1. Now, chapter 2 would have been all about the VI text editor. All right. And that's quite a lot. So again, I encourage you if you want to um, really work in Vim and be more comfortable with that text editor, do the Vim tutor, follow these programs. I encourage you to do that. It is tricky, but it's pretty cool to get that down. Um, it's still around. I guess it's not going to go anywhere. And then chapter 3 is really just working inside of the shell, entering in basic commands and understanding kind of the layout of it. Um, and this is just understanding the difference between the CLI and the GUI command line interface and the graphical user interface, understanding the shell and how it actually carries out commands and things like that. So um, nothing too, we didn't really miss much, right? It is good information, understanding they have the date command and setting the time and different places like that. There are certain bash files and configuration files and so on and so forth. And then we get into 4. So 4 is what I've assigned for the reading this time around. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Let's increase our view. So right now we'll just kind of skim through it real quick. So again, we'll be talking about creating users, privileges, the root account. All right. We talked a little bit about these. Yeah, a question came in about can you do history and date in one single command? Um, you probably could, if you used what's known as, we call it the pipe. So if you pipe it out, you could, that might work. Let me see, hold on. Maybe even you could customize it and create like a script. And once you do that script, then you'll get access to it. But for now, I like what we're doing. When we submit our information, you'll just hit history. You don't have to have the entire history, just the last piece that you want to clip, and then you do the date and use that snipping tool, do a Control C, Control V, put it in there and move on. Um, but there are ways, and we'll probably look at that, right? And we'll talk about the pipe command when it comes up soon as well, how it carries out different commands for you all in one command. So you can do multiple things with one command, oftentimes. All right. All right. So pretty straightforward stuff. They even demonstrate a little bit of some of the commands, so you can follow along in your own Linux as you're reading through this. They talk about managing, correcting. Here's like a little mini lab. All right, talking about groups. And then there's a chapter review. Probably be a good idea to read through this as well and also look at those detailed solutions. So pretty straightforward stuff. So let's take a look at some of those labs. There are quite a bit. There are 4. So this is a heavy week that we're ramping up, and also week 4 is heavy, and week 5 is heavy. And then week 6 we'll taper off. Okay. But week 5 has been posted. That should be fun for especially those going into security. Week 4, there's a lot of reading here. So I've assigned 10 points for the reading. It's from a new book as well, but it's so important and necessary, and we'll talk about that when the time comes. But it is in our ebook folder, and this is the book. We've seen this book before pop up. We'll be going over chapters 3 and 4, which is a lot, but the material, it's time, and we pretty much have to do it. And once you've done that reading, a sufficient amount of reading, you just put that you've read it, and you'll get the 10 points. But let's take a look at some of the labs for this week. So there's 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's look at lab 3, creating user accounts. So we have the scenario, and now you're going to begin by adding different users and understanding what the commands do. You'll create a user here. They even give you the name of the person to use. And you'll add some other things. You'll add a comment. Sometimes they ask for all kinds of things like his phone number, what room he's in, and all this. If they don't give you that information, you could probably just skip it. Just keep hitting enter. Here's the less command. I think we've used this command before. So first, it's all about exploring the default user settings. And then create and set up accounts, create a temporary account, and then also run this. This will be cool. The cat command is always a classic command to write. It will just print everything out onto the terminal. And then you'll wrap it up with the history and the date. Okay. So lab 4, just blaze right through it. I mean, yeah, lab 3 there. And then 4, same thing. 4 might even be a little shorter, about the same. Okay, this time you're going to be modifying, right? Same, different type of scenario. You'll modify. So it continues on from where you left off. I've split it up. Let's look at 5. Let's just make sure everything is clear. This time we're talking about groups. Okay. All right, good. All right, yep, pretty straightforward. And the last one, oh, let's go there. Configuring account profiles. Okay. Right. So by now, everybody should have a root user account as well. We figured out that, and depending on the operating system that you're using, the WSL by default, they don't have a root account, so it has to be created, the password for root. And once you do that, then you can switch into root. Um, all right, and then finally, again, what we'll do is take a look at uh, the week ahead. Um, Not much really else happening this week. It's pretty smooth sailing. We'll be talking about creating users, creating groups. You'll get some practical experience doing that here. The following week, we got 2 big time labs. I've took these from the old course and rewrote them, made them better. And the reading corresponds to these commands as well. So in lab 7, we're going to be learning about the gripe command. It's a powerful command. We're going to see it in action. I put in here research curl or wget. Um, and what these 2 commands will do will enable you to download this into your terminal. So you can download files from the internet with wget or curl. And you can, with curl, you can download it and change the name as well. So I'd like for you to use one of those commands to download this text file. And if you click on the text file, I'll click on it, open it in a new tab. We have a story of the king, the Frog King, or Iron Henry. But it's called The Frog King. That's the name of the story. It's a text document. Okay, I'm hosting it on my web server. You'll download that into your terminal, and then you're going to search the text with the gripe command. So it's a pretty interesting lesson. You just pretty much have to follow directions at this point. You don't really have to steer too far. But be familiar with curl and wget. I think that will be key. And you can use any name you want, but if you use this name, that's going to make these commands work better. Because obviously it could just be a Control C, Control V, and you can copy that right into your thing. But I think it's better to actually type it out, however you like to do it. But and then that's gonna kind of talk about gripe. But the other lab for next week is lab 8. And let's see here. This is now where we're going to be talking about piping. Okay, so there's that pipe command that I'm talking about, which enables you to do multiple things with one command. So we're going to be changing how we view things. So the PS to display PS is all the processes, but we want to view it a certain way. And so as you create these statements, we're going to be learning, well, what does that do and how does it work? What if we want to display something, but only lines 7 to 10? We don't want to see lines 1 through 6, and we don't want to see after 10. We specifically want a portion of what's being displayed. How do we go about doing that? And there are ways. So, and these commands kind of discuss what's happening. Um, this is the solution, right? There was a task, and this is actually the command, but can you evaluate what each component is doing? So do some research on that, so that you could explain it and submit it in there. Okay, that would be great. Other than that, I think we're going to be good for this week. I'm going to continue to grade everything that needs to be graded. Um, but I think we're off to a pretty strong start. I think everybody's engaged and set up. I haven't heard many tech issues at all. It looks like you guys are pretty smooth with your system that you got running. Everybody seems pretty happy. Um, I'm going to stop sharing here, and the recording is still in process. I will upload that later on.